Angelina Jolie and Billy Bob Thornton had one of the most intense and controversial relationships in Hollywood. Married in the early 2000s, they attracted attention not only for their eccentric behavior, but also for a detail that became a symbol of their union: a pendant containing both of their blood. Small, discreet, yet laden with meaning, this object became the center of countless speculations and theories about what was really happening behind the scenes of their marriage. Was the pendant merely an extreme display of affection, or was there something more behind this gesture? Could its significance be linked to ancient practices, occult rituals, or even the darkest secrets of the entertainment industry? Welcome to another night where mysteries never sleep. I'm Midnight, and this is 7 Nights. Before we begin, I'd like to ask for your help. Like the video, comment, and subscribe to the channel. It's just a click, but it makes a huge difference in helping YouTube recommend the videos to more people and allowing me to continue bringing this content to you. I'm counting on you. Let's get into the video. Hollywood has seen many intense romances, but few as peculiar as that of Angelina Jolie and Billy Bob Thornton. From the very beginning, something about this couple stood out. It wasn't just the age difference or their eccentric behavior. It was the feeling that there was something deeper behind their connection, as if, in some way, they had bonded beyond the conventional. It all started in 1999, behind the scenes of the film Pushing Tin. Angelina, young and rebellious, crossed paths with Billy Bob, who was engaged to actress Laura Dern at the time. What happened next? Just a few months later, Billy Bob broke off the engagement and, without any warning, married Angelina in a Las Vegas ceremony. The relationship was so sudden and unexpected that it even took Laura by surprise. She later said that she had left to shoot a project, and when she returned, her fiancé was already married to someone else. But what made this romance ignite so intensely and so abruptly? From the start, Angelina and Billy Bob seemed obsessed with each other. This wasn't a normal relationship. They made a point of showcasing how intense their love was, whether through bold statements or actions that, to many, seemed even frightening. But one detail in particular became the symbol of this obsession: the famous glass pendants that contained small samples of each other's blood. The official explanation? Billy Bob claimed that the vials were simply a way for them to feel connected when they were apart. But was that really all there was to it? Or did that blood symbolize something greater, something only the two of them understood? The use of blood in pacts and rituals is nothing new. Throughout history, entire civilizations have adopted this practice to create spiritual bonds, ensure protection, or even seal unbreakable agreements. What has never been fully explained is why, among so many ways to express love, Angelina and Billy Bob chose this particular one. Did they know the hidden meaning behind this gesture? Or were they merely playing with something they didn't fully understand? The couple's behavior only reinforced this aura of mystery. At public events, they often dressed in black, frequently adopting a gothic aesthetic. Angelina even tattooed Billy Bob's name on her arm and, in interviews, described their relationship as something almost supernatural. Billy Bob, on the other hand, began to show signs of unease. At first, he seemed just as invested as Angelina, but over time, some of his statements suggested that the relationship was becoming overwhelming. In interviews, he mentioned that sometimes the intensity was too much for him. But what did that mean? What could be so overwhelming that it made a man like Billy Bob feel suffocated? Even stranger is that, despite their deep connection, the marriage lasted only 2 years. Something that started so powerfully, something that seemed unbreakable, suddenly fell apart. But what really happened? And more importantly, was the blood pendant just an eccentric symbol of love, or were Angelina and Billy Bob involved in something far beyond what was ever revealed? An intense relationship, an unexpected marriage, and a symbol that became forever ingrained in pop culture, the infamous blood pendant. But what did this object truly signify? Was it merely an unusual romantic gesture, or did it represent something far deeper and more enigmatic? Few people remember, but it was Billy Bob Thornton who first mentioned the pendant to the press. In an interview, he explained that, due to their busy schedules, the two spent long periods apart and wanted to find a symbolic way to stay connected. The solution? A small glass vial where each carried the other's blood. But was that really all there was to it? Angelina also spoke about the subject, and her response was even more intriguing. To her, it was simply a simple and romantic way to express love. But let's be honest, how many couples do this? How many people, anywhere in the world, would think of putting their partner's blood in a vial and wearing it around their neck? It's not something one does on impulse. And this is where we begin to enter darker territory. The idea of sharing blood as a symbol of unity is not new. Ancient cultures used this type of practice to create spiritual bonds, seal eternal promises, and even ensure mystical protection. In some beliefs, blood is thought to carry a person's vital essence, and sharing it creates a connection that cannot be undone. Now think about this. Angelina and Billy Bob, two artists surrounded by a world of symbolism and rituals, spontaneously decided to adopt a practice that, historically, is associated with permanent spiritual bonds? Or was there something more behind this gesture? If we look at Angelina's career up to that point, some details stand out. Before meeting Billy Bob, she had already portrayed characters involved in dark themes and emotionally intense roles. Additionally, she had always shown a fascination with the mystical, the occult, and the unusual. Billy Bob, on the other hand, was no stranger to this world either. He had always been a man full of superstitions, and even mentioned in interviews that he believed in forces beyond our understanding. So, what was really behind this pendant? Just an impulsive act by a passionate couple, or a symbolic pact that carried a deeper meaning? And if it was just a symbol of love, why did Billy Bob begin to show signs of discomfort over time? A few months before their separation, he mentioned that the relationship was becoming too much for him and avoided discussing the pendant in interviews. It was as if something that seemed like a simple gesture of affection had become a burden, a bond from which he could not escape. Then, the unexpected happened, the separation. Just like the marriage, the breakup was abrupt, without much explanation. The couple that once seemed unbreakable simply fell apart. But the question that was never answered is, what happened to the pendant? After the divorce, Angelina moved on and rebuilt her image, distancing herself from that eccentric phase of her youth. Billy Bob, on the other hand, rarely spoke about it, and when he did, he seemed uneasy. What did that pendant truly represent to him? And even stranger, if such a pact did exist, could it leave consequences even after the relationship ended? A marriage can be simply a commitment between two people. But what happens when that union involves blood? And when that blood is carried on the body as a symbol of something no one can fully explain? Angelina Jolie and Billy Bob Thornton claimed that the pendants were just a demonstration of love. But was there a deeper meaning behind this gesture? What we know is that their marriage happened suddenly, almost as if it had been driven by something greater. The Las Vegas ceremony was discreet, without the traditional Hollywood glamour. There were no months of preparations, no grand announcements. Just the two of them, a justice of the peace, and a commitment sealed in an almost secretive manner. But beyond the traditional vows, was another kind of pact being made at that moment? Looking at history, we find many cultures that believed blood could be used to strengthen unbreakable bonds. Blood pacts were common among warriors and spiritual leaders, as it was believed that sharing one's essence created a connection that transcended earthly life. Could it be that, consciously or unconsciously, Angelina and Billy Bob were recreating this type of ritual? The two never explicitly explained why they chose blood as a symbol of their relationship. But something curious happened in the months following their marriage. Their behavior changed. The intensity increased. They began making increasingly strange statements about the love they felt. In one interview, Angelina said she couldn't be away from Billy Bob for more than a few hours without feeling an inexplicable anguish, as if she were connected to him in a way that went beyond emotions. But what about Billy Bob? If, in the beginning, he seemed just as involved as Angelina, over time, something in him started to shift. His interviews became more restrained, and the sparkle in his eyes seemed to fade. On one occasion, he mentioned that the relationship was becoming too heavy. But what did that mean? What could be so suffocating for someone who was already known for his eccentric lifestyle? Some people believe that certain types of pacts cannot be broken without consequences, that by mixing blood, energy, and intention, a connection is created that does not simply disappear because the relationship has ended. But did Angelina and Billy Bob know this? Or were they just experimenting with something without realizing the impact it could have? And then came the divorce. It was as sudden as the marriage. No scandals, no public fights, just an abrupt end. But was it just a normal breakup, or was something deeper happening? Some theories suggest that Billy Bob began to feel that something was off, that the weight of their relationship was not just from emotional intensity, but from something greater, something unseen. Angelina, on the other hand, moved on. Her behavior changed, and her public image began to be reshaped. It was as if, all of a sudden, she had left behind that darker phase of her life. But Billy Bob didn't seem as comfortable. When asked about the marriage years later, he simply said it was a crazy time in his life, without elaborating. But if there truly was something powerful behind this bond, what happened to the blood pact? Did that connection still exist in some way? And if the answer is yes, what kind of impact could it have had on their lives, even after all these years? Hollywood loves intense love stories, but few were as strange as that of Angelina Jolie and Billy Bob Thornton. The blood pendant they wore was dismissed as an eccentricity, a quirk of a couple who enjoyed defying norms. But what if there was more behind it? What if this gesture was part of something much bigger, something beyond the idea of a simple relationship? It's no secret that Hollywood is surrounded by symbolism, rituals, and secrets that few people truly understand. Some of the biggest stars in the world have been linked to discreet societies and mysterious practices. Some call it conspiracy theories. Others believe these details are hidden in plain sight, waiting to be deciphered. And when we look at the blood pendant, it fits perfectly into this narrative. This is not the first time that the use of blood has appeared in pop culture as a symbol laden with meaning. Various artists have mentioned in cryptic ways the use of this element in contexts that go beyond science or art. Even years later, Angelina Jolie was photographed at charity events wearing necklaces with red stones, speculated by many to be subtle references to her past. Was it just a coincidence, or was it a way to keep the symbolism alive? What makes this story even stranger is that after the marriage ended, Billy Bob completely changed the way he spoke about that phase of his life. In the beginning, he enthusiastically described the relationship, speaking openly about his bond with Angelina. But after the divorce, he began avoiding the topic. When asked about the blood pendants, he would either nervously laugh or change the subject. If it was just a playful gesture between two lovers, why did he never want to talk about it again? Some say Hollywood is more than just an entertainment hub. That behind the glamour, there are codes, pacts, and traditions that only a few are privy to. And what once seemed like an unusual accessory might actually be a piece of something much bigger. Billy Bob never explained what happened to his pendant. Angelina never mentioned it again either. Were the vials simply discarded after the breakup, like any sentimental object? Or was there a reason why they could never just get rid of them? What makes this story even more intriguing is how dramatically Angelina changed after the marriage. She reinvented herself, became a global activist, a UN ambassador, and a respected figure in political and social circles. It was as if she had completely left behind that intense and dark phase of her life. But Billy Bob, he never seemed to have fully recovered. If the pendant was just a simple symbol of love, why did one of them move on while the other seemed to carry an invisible weight? And more importantly, what does this case reveal about Hollywood's deepest secrets? The relationship between Angelina Jolie and Billy Bob Thornton seemed unbreakable. They were always together, always intense, always demonstrating to the world that their connection was unique. But just as suddenly as it began, their marriage ended abruptly. No public fights, no grand explanations. Just the end. But was this breakup really as simple as it seemed? Billy Bob was the first to speak about the divorce. In an interview, he claimed that the main reason for their split was that they were completely different. But this explanation never quite convinced people. After all, how could a couple who seemed so deeply connected suddenly drift apart? What could have happened behind the scenes to turn that intense obsession into complete silence? One thing is certain, something changed in their dynamic. If, in the beginning, Billy Bob seemed just as invested as Angelina, by the end, he was showing signs of emotional exhaustion. He even said that he felt small next to her, as if he were trapped in something larger than he could comprehend. But what exactly did that mean? Blood pacts, whether symbolic or not, carry a weight that goes beyond the physical. In many cultures, it is believed that such a bond cannot be broken without consequences. Even if the pendants were thrown away or forgotten in some drawer, could the connection created between them still be present in some way? And looking at what happened afterward, it's impossible to ignore the contrast. Angelina transformed. She left that marriage and completely rewrote her story. She became one of the most influential women in the world, engaged in humanitarian causes and involved in international politics. It was as if she had been reborn, leaving behind any trace of that darker period in her life. Billy Bob, on the other hand, took a different path. Although he continued his career, he never had the same media presence again. Whenever his marriage to Angelina was mentioned, his reaction was odd. He avoided discussing it, or when he did, he spoke in vague terms, never truly explaining what had happened. What's even more curious is that, even after the divorce, Angelina remained associated with symbols reminiscent of that period. Years later, for example, she adopted a necklace with a dark red stone, similar to the blood pendant. Was it just a simple piece of jewelry, or a reminder of something that was never truly left behind? And most importantly, if this blood pact truly created a connection that could not be undone, does that bond still exist in some way? When a relationship ends, life moves on. People drift apart, start over, and forget. But what if that connection goes beyond what we can see? What if, even though they are separated, Angelina Jolie and Billy Bob Thornton are still linked in some way? The concept of spiritual and energetic pacts has existed for centuries. In many cultures, it is believed that certain bonds, once formed, cannot simply be undone. Blood, in particular, has always been considered one of the most powerful substances for creating lasting ties. In ancient rituals, it was common for people to share blood as a form of oath, a promise that transcended the physical, something that even time could not erase. If Angelina and Billy Bob's blood pendant symbolized a pact, was it truly broken when their relationship ended? Or does that connection still exist in some form? What makes this theory even more intriguing is how the two followed completely different paths after their divorce. Angelina emerged as a new woman. Her image changed drastically. She became involved in humanitarian causes, became a UN ambassador, and began building a new narrative for her life. It was as if she had undergone a transformation, an evolution that completely distanced her from that darker phase. Billy Bob, on the other hand, never seemed as comfortable with the past. Whenever the marriage is mentioned, his reaction is strange. He avoids talking about it, looks away, gives vague answers. In one interview, he even said that this period of his life was too big for him to handle. But what exactly did he mean by that? If what happened between them was just an intense relationship, why does he still carry this shadow to this day? Some spiritual traditions claim that when a blood pact is made, it must be formally undone for the energies to be balanced again. Otherwise, something of the bond remains. Not physically, but at a deeper level, an invisible connection that continues to exist, even subtly. And this leads us to an even more unsettling question. Did Angelina and Billy Bob ever try to break this pact? Did one of them, or both, realize that this connection could not simply be ignored? What we do know is that neither of them ever spoke about the fate of the pendants. They disappeared without any explanation. No journalist ever found a trace of them, and no interview clarified the mystery. It was as if these small glass vials had vanished from reality. But were they destroyed? Kept in secrecy? Or somehow do they still exist? If spiritual pacts truly leave invisible marks, Angelina and Billy Bob may have felt the effects in different ways. Angelina moved on, but Billy Bob seemed stuck in that past somehow. He never had another relationship as public, nor did he ever involve himself in something as intense. Could it have been the weight of a pact that was never fully broken? And if this bond still exists, how does it manifest today? What happened between Angelina Jolie and Billy Bob Thornton may have been just an eccentric romance. But what if it wasn't? What if, on some level, that connection is still there, invisible to the world, but present in a way that only they can feel? The marriage ended. The intense relationship that seemed impossible to break apart dissolved as quickly as it began. But one question was never answered. What happened to the blood pendants? Since the breakup, neither Angelina Jolie nor Billy Bob Thornton has spoken about the whereabouts of the small glass vials that contained each other's blood. Were they discarded, secretly kept, or did something prevent them from simply being thrown away? Looking at history, we see that objects imbued with such significance are rarely treated as ordinary items. In many cultures, it is believed that blood should not be wasted or discarded carelessly, as it still maintains a connection with the person to whom it belonged. If Angelina and Billy Bob did, in fact, participate in a pact, whether knowingly or not, these pendants might have become something that could not simply be disposed of without consequences. But if they still exist, where are they now? Are they in the hands of obscure collectors, locked away in private vaults, or hidden somewhere inaccessible to the public? And if they were destroyed, could that explain the sudden distancing between the two and the drastic change in their lives? Another curious detail is that, even years after the divorce, Angelina never completely abandoned the symbolism associated with blood. In 2014, she revealed that she had tattooed coordinates on her arm representing important moments in her life. One detail that few noticed? One of the coordinates corresponded to a mysterious location in Asia, the meaning of which was never fully explained. Billy Bob, on the other hand, seems to carry an invisible weight since then. He has admitted that he has never been able to openly talk about that period, and that, to this day, he avoids reliving those memories. As if there was something about that relationship that he preferred to forget. In the end, we may never know the truth about the blood pendants. Perhaps they were just an exaggerated symbol of an intense love. Or perhaps they are part of something much bigger, a mystery lost among Hollywood's darkest secrets. But the lingering question is, have Angelina and Billy Bob truly freed themselves from this bond, or does this pact still follow them in ways the world will never know? Angelina Jolie and Billy Bob Thornton shared one of Hollywood's most intense and enigmatic relationships. The whirlwind marriage, the obsessive declarations, and most notably, the mysterious blood pendant made this union something far beyond the ordinary. At first, it all seemed like the eccentricity of a passionate couple, but as the years passed, the silence surrounding the matter only made the story even more intriguing. Whether the pendants still exist or whether this connection truly left invisible marks, we may never know. But one thing is certain, this remains one of the strangest stories ever seen in the entertainment world. And whether it was merely a symbol of love or something much deeper, this story is just one piece, and one day, maybe you'll see the whole puzzle. If this made you think, subscribe, like the video. It helps the channel grow. Don't forget to share, because more voices mean more discoveries.